Okay, so now we're recording. Hi, everyone. I'm Ethan Lauer. I'm the current Director of Governmental Affairs in Undergraduate Student Government. I'm also the Chair of the Election Commission this year. My pronouns are he, him. Um, we have a few other Election Commission members here today, Caitlin Campisi, who is in USG, as well as Liz Clark, who is a student member. And then we have our advisor, Megan Factor Page, GA Hannah Hall, and then another member of USG, Eric Gomez. So it's good to see you all here today. How today is going to work. I am recording this session for online use, so everyone will be able to see this section of it as I go over it. We'll have a few other sessions coming up in the future. If you miss one and would rather be able to ask questions, not in person, but virtually. So we'll go ahead and do that. The order of how I'm going to do it, I'm going to go through the process as if I was a candidate and do my best to explain how it's working. The election is different this year because of the pandemic, and we are doing it all virtual. While you can campaign in person, everything done by the Election Commission will be accessible online. That does make things a little more confusing because we don't have that in-person contact or meetings, but we will work through it together. It should be a really good experience, and I'm excited that all of you are able to join me today. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. The first thing I'm going to show is the Undergraduate Student Government website. Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay. So this is the USG website. It's accessible by just looking us up. It'll come up, but you can also go to our social media pages. They're linked here, but you can get to this website from them through our link tree. And it has all of the election information that you're going to need. So you're going to click on elections. You can go here and learn about elections in general. So we do have elected and appointed positions in USG. Those of you here are likely interested in running. So that includes the position of president, 8 directors, and 10 elected senators. Appointed positions, will have information about that later, but that is also something that you can look into if you don't want to run, or if for some reason you cannot run or you lose your race. That might be something that you can apply for if you are still interested and you feel like you're qualified. So that information is here, and we'll have some position descriptions up so you'll be able to learn about the gist of your position that you're interested in, or if you're making a decision, feel free to look through those and compare. There's some appointed information here, as I was talking about earlier. And then there's some information on voting in the election. So generally, I'm assuming that most of y'all aren't freshmen, but for those that are, our elections are all online. We'll talk about that a little more later. They take place over 2 days from 8 to 5, and that's how people vote. Again, feel free to read through this page if you want more detailed information. This page is dedicated for running for a USG position. So today we're going to go through the candidate checklist, and I have some other documents up in different tabs that we'll go over. They're all linked here, so you should have access to them in one form or another. Wherever there are not links currently, they will be added, and they can be added pretty quickly. We did have to get to a little bit of a running start this year, considering how the schedule was laid out. So I apologize for any inconvenience, but everything that you need to run is up. So first, a little bit about the process. What you're applying for now is to petition. So going through this process, you are going to eventually become a candidate, but the immediate goal is to get on the election petition, and then collect signatures. You need a total of 202 signatures, and that is what gets you onto the ballot. That is not necessarily your campaign. Your campaign comes later, where you'll be able to show your experience, talk about policies, talk about what you want to do in that position. But first, you need to get on the ballot to get there. So you actually cannot campaign until you are officially on the ballot past petitioning. But that makes it pretty easy to collect signatures. You just want someone to think you're qualified enough to get on the ballot. It's not competitive. You can have multiple people petitioning for the same position, and then you'll eventually run against each other. So that is the short overview of that process before I go over these steps. First, you're going to want to look at the Undergraduate Student Government Charter. I'll open that for just a second, but we won't spend much time on it. Don't feel like you have to read through every segment of the charter and, understand it all right away, but you do want to get a gist of what's going on, especially the responsibilities that you will manage in your position. So please look through this before applying. Get a sense of what you're applying for. Next, you can review the descriptions. There are some descriptions in the charter, but they're pretty vague. So we're working on a document to make things more clear. That'll be coming shortly, most likely tomorrow, once the Election Commission meets. Next, you'll want to review and record important dates and expectations. These are down here, so you want to look at the time commitment involved and the time period involved. So this is headed all the way into March. The 17th is the last of the election day, and results will be announced later. Then comes official USG responsibilities, and you go from there. It's a pretty extensive date list, so you probably want to only pay attention to the dates leading up to the election. But if you really are confident you're going to win, which you could be, you can go ahead and mark these dates down too. But generally understand that those are time commitments that you're expected to meet. Fourth, you're going to review the 2021 election rules. So these are actually almost completed. I have them right here. They'll be linked shortly. First, this is actually the candidacy agreement. It is talked about right below that. So I'll actually go a little bit backwards. This is what you sign to acknowledge the rules that you're signing up for. And I'll talk about how to submit that in a moment. First, I'm going to summarize what is included on the rules. Again, don't feel like you have to memorize everything. Look at what is relevant to you, at what issues you think might come up, especially with having a virtual election. Anyone that knows about USG elections, things might be a little different this year. So you want to familiarize yourself with things that are relevant to you now. So first and foremost, you want to understand what petitioning looks like and what setting up a campaign looks like. So again, the election is exclusively virtual. That's a little statement up there. And then we go down to the information that's included about every year. First, you do have to meet certain qualifications according to university policy on participation in activities. That means you have to be enrolled in at least 8 undergraduate credit hours during the year of appointment. You need to have a current GPA cumulative of 2.25. You also need to maintain that. And you have to have passed 6 or more hours in the preceding semester. You also cannot be on semester warning or academic probation. You can also only run for one position. So for instance, if you're going for senator for the arts and sciences, you cannot run for director of governmental affairs. I already talked about the signature requirements, which is 1% of the Kent campus undergraduate students registered for the spring semester of 2021. That just so happens to be 202 signatures. And the deadline for the petition forms is February 16th, 2021 at 5 p.m. We have discussed, because it's a pretty short time period, extending that to that Friday. So be aware that if that happens, it's only to your advantage. That deadline will not close in. Next, some general information about campaigning. So, eventually you'll get into materials. You'll put out flyers. You might pay for Instagram ads, Facebook pages, that kind of thing. All of that involves your campaign, and that's something that you'll build later on after petitioning. You do need to make sure you're abiding by the rules, which are going to be discussed below. And there are, there are restrictions on what happens to the rules. The Election Commission will decide what happens if there are infractions. Each candidate is considered responsible for their campaign. You're the head of your campaign. A candidate can submit an optional platform proposal. Almost everyone does that. We'll have an example up pretty soon as well. And we'll also link it on this page too. You'll also be required to take down your campaign materials after the election. So here's involving the violation of rules. Hopefully, we really won't have any instances of this, but being realistic, people make mistakes, and that's one of the main things that we'll be discussing. So what that process looks like, first, there'll be a report of a violation, whether it's myself or a commissioner finding out about it or seeing something, whether it's another candidate, someone that's just a student, administration, or an advisor. Minor infractions, like putting a flyer up in a place that it shouldn't be, receive a warning for the first offense. A second offense of that same thing is going to incur a 3-day suspension from campaigning. The third one, indefinite suspension. It really is unlikely that that kind of thing keeps happening unless it's intentional. And before that third suspension happens, the commission will hold a hearing. Things like unethical fundraising can result in an indefinite suspension from campaigning until we hold a hearing, which could strike the candidate from the ballot. Again, look over these rules, but as long as you're following the general guidelines, you really shouldn't confront any of these violations. All of our hearings are going to be held when our meetings are held at 10 a.m., with the exception of some scheduling conflicts. This is some information about how the hearings go. You can appeal those hearings to the All University Hearing Board. We may also refer the hearing to the All University Hearing Board if there's some kind of ethical concern with a commissioner being involved. And we reserve the right to enforce these penalties as necessary to uphold the election rules. Fundraising and expenditures. Now we're getting into things that involve details that you want to know. So for the presidential race, you can raise up to $600 or spend up to $600. And for all the positions, $500. I would say that in my experience, I did not really approach that cap. I'm sure that other members can discuss that, but that is the cap if you should want to raise that much money or spend that much money. The spending looks like campaign materials, digital or physical advertisements, or any in-kind donations. So if someone, say, like produces materials for you and gives them to you, you still have to record that information down. And we'll have a link, which is right here, on a campaign funding report. So you'll put down everything that you are raising or spending. Again, some examples. I don't want to spend too much time on things talking y'all's ear off, but I do also want to make sure that I'm explaining things properly. So here are some campaigning rules. Some of these are a little newer, so I would pay attention to this part. Campaigning is prohibited in all residence halls unless you live there. If you live in a residence hall, you can campaign in a residence hall. But even if you live there, you still have to contact the resident assistant or resident hall director for permission to post flyers. Flyering for all the residence halls requires you to contact resident services as a whole, like their secretaries. So you'll also want to look into that. Make sure you're being mindful of other people's authority. Don't invade their space. Don't presume. Just go ahead and ask them. They're probably going to say yes, especially since it's USG. Campaigning is also prohibited in all computer labs. You can't put stuff on screens about your campaign. Campaigning is also prohibited on official listservs. So you can't, for instance, If you work for the Women's Center, you cannot have them send out your campaign materials. However, if you contact a student org that has a listserv, like the College Republicans, you can ask them to send out your flyers. They may say no, and that's something that you got to accept, but you can ask student organizations to do that for you. Campaigning is also permitted in classrooms with the express permission of a professor. I know that looks different this year too, with things being virtual, but that might also be an advantage. You can ask a professor, a past professor, to come and join their Blackboard class, their Zoom class, their Microsoft Teams class, and talk about things. You might also be able to, talk to a professor you don't really know and still be able to join their class and talk about your campaign. That starts to bring in physical campaigning. So normally you're allowed to campaign in academic buildings provided you're abiding by all the rules, but the rules have changed with the FLASH Safe 7. You must follow the FLASH Safe 7. Keep yourself safe. Keep your future constituents, your students, your peers safe. Campaign properly if you're going to do it in person. It's okay to do it. Just make sure you're doing it safely. Again, we won't require you to do that though. So if you feel uncomfortable, if you're immunocompromised, do not worry. You do not have to campaign in person. No university-sponsored printers or copiers, including the USG one, may be used to print or copy campaign materials. Along with that, no university-sponsored funds, including USG funds, may be used to endorse a candidate or provide financial or material contributions. No sound amplifications may be used on or any part of campus, including from cars. No candidate may disseminate libelous or slanderous information regarding another candidate or current member of USG. That's pretty straightforward. No candidates, this is new this year, so I want everyone to take note of this. No candidates may receive endorsements from other candidates or endorsements from current members of undergraduate student government. So why this is, undergraduate student government at Kent State does not have political parties. Political parties are a way to align candidates with each other on a specific platform, campaign together, and do so in a healthy environment and compete against what is presumably a party in opposition to whatever your values are. We don't have that. There is no formal way to organize you into groups. And honestly, I think it would be a negative impact on our USG because typically we have candidates that seem to want to work together. And I think that's great. And I think that we have enough individual independence to do that. So we did encounter problems with the last election that have been voiced by current and past USG members involving people teaming up with each other and endorsing each other and running people against certain other people to get them into positions. Now, while I love collaboration, there's a thin line between what is collaborating and what is working against someone for the benefit of yourself and your group. While I'm totally comfortable with you forming friendships and taking advice from other people, what I don't want is for people to vote for other people simply because there's a certain group that has coalesced around a person or a certain value, because we do not have the instruments to handle that. So I am asking that current USG members do not endorse anyone and that candidates don't endorse each other. That doesn't mean you can't meet with someone, take advice from them. It doesn't mean you can't, share ideas and talk to them. That's perfectly fine. There's a difference between saying, I want this person to win because they support me and I support them. And hey, I hope you win. I'm doing the same work that you are. I hope we can both win on our merits. All campaign materials, physical and digital, must contain the following information. It's pretty straightforward. You're going to put that on everything. You'll want to do that anyway so that people know when the election is and how to vote. The materials you create don't require pre-approval. We expect that they're going to follow the rules. If we find that they don't, that's when we start to experience problems and we'll go up to the violation of rules above and follow that process. The Election Commission, chaired by myself, is vested with the authority to remove or censor with discretion all materials that violate these rules, we are able to change the rules appropriately. We'll notify you all if there are any changes, but I doubt there will be anything major. So this is election day procedure. I talked about this a little bit at the beginning. March 16th and March 17th are our election days. You can vote from 8 to 5 p.m. The polls are virtual. They have been virtual for a while. You can vote on the Undergraduate Student Government website or through Flashline. It's accessible through both. Candidates are prohibited from soliciting votes using personal devices, so you can't pass your phone around a room and ask for people to log in and vote on it. If there's a tie, the election will be decided by flipping a coin. Candidates are encouraged to join a virtual election results party on March 17th at 7 p.m. You'll start getting some unofficial results. Hopefully we'll be able to make that fun for y'all. I know that it's disappointing that it's virtual, but we're just trying to keep everyone safe and abide by the Flash's Safe 7. Official results will be released later with election appeals due March 19th, 2020 at 5 p.m. You can see the election schedule here. So you are required to attend at least one public forum and one debate. If you can't, don't worry. We're not going to be upset at you or anything like that. Just inform us of your reason. Hopefully, if you're looking through that schedule, you'll know now. If something comes up, please email us. We just want to know so we can count you and make sure you're still in the race. We've had, people drop out for whatever reason, and that's perfectly fine. We've had people decide to go for appointed position, and that's fine too. But we need to know so that we can make sure you're not on the ballot if you decide to do that. And part of that is making sure you're attending these events and being visible to people. These events will also be important considering we don't have those in-person opportunities like we have in the past. Also, we're nearing the end of this. Again, sorry for having to talk so long, but I want to make sure that I'm covering all of this, especially since this is for the recording. So candidates who violate these rules are subject per this agreement to suspension or removal from the election. When you sign that document up there, this is what you're signing to. You're agreeing to abide by these rules. Candidates who win their respective elections but are determined to have violated the rules within 24 hours of the conclusion of the election may see their election results invalidated. In this case, the second place person will win. After the certification of the results by the Election Commission, no candidate may challenge the results. So once that appeal time ended that I talked about, there can be no more challenges. Contact information. So as I said, I'm the chair of the Election Commission. You can contact me at my email right here, elauer1@kent.edu. You can also schedule meetings with me on my Calendly. I think I'll actually put my Calendly link on here now that I think about it. But that's also on the USG website. I'll show you real quick. Go down to directors. Right here, they're not quite updated yet for this semester, but I assume they will be soon. My Calendly is, so if you click this, you can get to my Calendly and you'll be able to schedule. We do not currently have a vice chair. We should have one by tomorrow, so that information will be here. This is just how to title emails so that I get them and respond to them as quickly as possible. And again, another statement about the power of the Election Commission, what happens if the chair and vice chair are unable to fill their duties. One of these wonderful people will be able to step up and take my place. I hope that doesn't have to happen. However, if I am ever quarantined or isolated, I realize that's a real thing, and especially this semester. So we'll have people waiting in the wings for that. That concludes this document. This is the core of the information that you'll want to know for the logistics, the rules of running. Moving back to that checklist, I'm going to head back over to elections and run for elected position. So we just went over the 2021 election rules. We just saw the candidacy agreement. You'll want to save and sign this to your computer because it's going to be uploaded in a future step. We'll have an example platform that'll also be included in the rules document here. and then you'll click apply for a position. Now I might be logged into the admin mode, but hopefully I'm not, so that you can see what it looks like for you. Okay, good. So instead of view and edit, you will be able to click apply for a position and go from there. I'm not going to go through that because um, I don't know what it's going to look for me or if it's going to be helpful or not that helpful. But this is what this page should look like for you. So you'll click apply and you'll put in all the information that's already been talked about with these steps. So you'll want your platform, which we'll have an example above. You'll want a headshot. Make sure you get the formatting right. If it looks awkward when the file uploads, feel free to change it, edit it, and you'll want to include that candidacy agreement. If anything goes wrong or you want to revise anything, including your platform, please email me. We'll reopen your application and allow you to edit it. It is totally acceptable to do that. I did it myself. I put in a small platform at the beginning and then I wanted to extend it. And so I did that later on. Again, we'll have examples for that too. Then we move on to these 2 Google Forms. These are your last few steps before you get to the petition signature link, which will be right on here once people will start signing up. This is the candidate information form linked here. Sorry, I'm trying not to click my controls. Okay. Oh. This is what you're filling out once you have applied. So let me actually give you a preview. Okay, so these are the steps that you just saw. Once you do all of them, you're going to check them off. If you don't check off all of them, it's not going to let you go forward. Once you check all of them, you're going to go here. Then you're going to reinsert this information, all of these things. Why are you interested? Describe your experience if you have any. If you don't, that's okay. Upload your platform, upload your headshot, same things you just did. Is there anything else you want to add? Ask a question, add a comment, stuff like that. You're going to click submit. I'm just going to click back. But this you're going to complete afterwards. It's your last step to be included on the petition signature form. That way, you're going to get here, and instead of just a blank spot or blank text for some of these guys, you're going to have your picture, you're going to have your platform, and you're going to have a short little bio about yourself that will include. Feel free, to add that, but it'll really that's what your platform should be. If you want something added, if you want to say something that you didn't say in your platform, again, tell us. We'll go ahead and include it. However, this is not your campaign. So we do want it to be mostly experience-based. Why should you sign my petition? Not necessarily what you're going to do. So I actually shouldn't say platform. We don't want it to be, I'm going to do X, Y, Z for you, sign my petition. You really want it to be, I was the chair or the vice chair of the undergraduate student government committee, or I'm sorry, a undergraduate student government committee. I was involved with so-and-so. I did this kind of work. I'm an RA. I'm in KIC. I'm a PLTC leader. I am a flash guide. This is my experience. Please sign my petition. That's what people are going to see. Normally, you have a paper book. People would go around and sign it. You give them your little spiel. Instead, you can still do that. You can still talk to people. You can send them an email with this form linked and say like, hey, I'm running for undergraduate student government. Again, all those campaign rules apply. So keep in mind, not on a university listserv, but let's say college Republicans, do you want to help me petition to get to that campaigning portion? They're like, sure, okay, send out this link. Someone might look through it and go ahead and check mark your name. In this case, option 1, but they'll see a little bit about you, check mark it, and you'll be good to go. And once you collect 202 of those, we'll have it recorded in the responses here, which are currently blank. We'll let you know you're good to go. We'll keep you updated because this is different. You don't necessarily have access to the form like you used to when it was a physical thing. You count your signatures, but we will give you updates. I think more than weekly, but at least weekly. And then if you meet that goal, you'll be good to go. So that is what the petitioning process looks like. Again, campaigning and petitioning, slightly different, still garnering people's approval, but the petition is getting to the ballot. You don't make sure people know when they're signing it, you're not voting for me, you're just supporting my perspective or putting my perspective or experience on the ballot later on. And then post petitioning, once you're on the ballot, we'll go ahead and move on to campaigning. But we kind of already covered most of that. Again, there'll be some events, some stuff and the dates that we'll talk about. But that is the informational session that I've delivered today. Megan, Caitlin, Hannah, is there anything that I am missing right now? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Is there anything I am missing that I need to go over?
Not from my perspective. I think you tackled everything that I would have as well. I don't know if there's any questions from the audience. I haven't gotten anything through chat, but I also want to allow Caitlin and Hannah to interject too.
Awesome. Well, in that case, let's stop recording for now.
Okay, gotcha. Recording will be